All right. So getting towards the end of February, full-blown college football offseason, it's here. But that doesn't mean the topics stop. I mean, this week has been wild. Transfer portal, recruiting, coaching moves, the NCAA trying to mess up college football more than they already do, which is impressive as always. But
Right.
before we jump into all of this, I'm joined today by two very special guests. Guys, I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourselves, let everybody know where they can find all of your great content. I think the easiest way to do this is just go straight down the line, high top, and then down to Hall of Fame.
Appreciate it, Ty. Appreciate you having us on here, man. It means a lot. Yeah, Hightop Sports. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and as well as on YouTube. It varies depending on which platform you look at. I think Instagram is _ TikTok, I think it's at Hightop Sports, and then Twitter is as well. But we have a good time. We talk a lot of smack, have a lot of fun. So make sure you guys come check us out. Have a good time.
And thanks, man, for having me on. I'm Jason Watkins with the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. You can find me on Twitter is mostly where I'm going to be at. It's at BirdieManDub. On YouTube, it would just be at CFB-pod. Or a podcast, actually. So easy money there. So Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. We talk about a lot of Oklahoma stuff, but, a lot of national stuff too. I mean, I've kind of been covering a lot of this. I've really been on this whole stuff with the Pac-12 and BIG12 and all this stuff. I mean, it's what a joke, but enjoying it. But thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely. Super excited about this. Been looking forward for this episode for quite some time. And what a better place to start than the Pac-12? Because for the last 3 live streams, I've kicked this off talking about the Pac-12 being down bad. Guys, I've said this twice before. I'm going to say it again and then pass it off because I think stories need context, and this context is necessary. The Pac-12 came to the table after the Big Ten had already had their mega deal done, hoping, ready, hungry to get their deal done. The problem is before they had anything tangible, they were already promising figures, saying we could get upwards of $40 million per team. Well, Jason, your conference, the Big 12, they jumped the gun. The Pac-12 thought they were going to be the next Power 5 conference to negotiate their TV media rights deal, and the Big 12 jumped in front of them and said, hold on, not so fast, and negotiated a media deal worth $36.1 million per team. The issue comes where now the Pac-12 has no leverage. What media rights organization, ESPN, Fox, CBS, whoever, is going to look at the Pac-12 and say, with USC and UCLA heading out, you are worth more than the Big 12? Now, all of these institutions are operating under the assumption that they're a $40 million a year deal owed that's not present. And today we've seen an absolute tomfoolery when it comes to who's involved, who's not involved. Hightop, I'm going to start with you, man. What are you thinking from looking at this? Because it's just wild that it's taking this long.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that we're having this conversation because just the other week I had a buddy on and he was trying to brag about the Pac-12 and it being back because obviously they had a great season last year.
I know, they had a really good year.
Six finishing in the top 25. But with the departure of USC and UCLA going into the Big Ten, look, I think in the microscope of things, the way that we're looking at it, it's a couple years from now, this is all kind of go by the wayside. I feel like we're going to end up being into a 2, maybe 3 big power conference. And that's kind of honestly how it's going to end up. It's because it's just too much minutia going on right now. Obviously we're talking on the precast with Ion TV and Apple TV. Nobody knows who to pick it up, if they should pick up the Pac-12. And they're going to end up finding themselves in no man's land if they don't make a move quickly. So I find the Pac-12 kind of diminishing and having to scatter very quickly to find home because your anchors. And look, the Big Ten, their anchors are Ohio State and Michigan. So it's essentially if those 2 teams would lead the Big Ten, what would the Big Ten go look up and do? Now, look, I think Deion may be able to hold some flame for Colorado, but that's going to be short-lived if he's not winning football games, right? So the hype's there. I think they need to try to figure out how they can capitalize on that hype right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, what are you thinking?
My thing is that, and I mean, the money is one thing. And the whole deal about when they started all this whole deal and everything, and they had their window to do some negotiating, and they were thinking it needed to be at that 40. And so they left that negotiation with Fox, ESPN, all of them. and Fox drops out. The problem is this, and it was what you said just a minute ago, is that you run into it now at this point. There's really just not space left. Brett Yormark has talked a lot about the fact that you've got some of these other major professional sports that are about to redo their deals as well. So there's just not a ton of space. And now if it's the SEC and they're wanting to do like a majority streaming contract, right? The SEC could probably do it because it's got that much cachet. Everybody wants to watch it. I mean, that's the big league. The Big 10 probably as well, although probably in any event, none of these guys want to be the first one that are going to go majority streaming content. And particularly when you just lose your LA schools, the biggest market that you have. And those are really the biggest rivals. USC is everybody's rival in the Pac-12, right?
Sure.
And I read something from Dodge yesterday on CBS and from Dennis Dodd on CBS. He's talking about, it's always, everybody's talking about that it's these markets and everything, but what drives college football? Rivalries.
And
money, but where does the money come from?
The rivalries, right? So it goes hand in hand. So, yeah.
Because the eyeballs go towards where the big games are.
Absolutely. Exactly. And here's the thing: if you're what they're talking about with these streaming deals, first off, Washington and Oregon not okay with that. They're not going to be okay with it. I think that this is, and either way, they're looking to go to the Big Ten at some point anyway. I don't see that this is going to work out too well. I mean, obviously the whole deal today on the Ion Network, stuff like that, but they're throwing all this crap up against the wall to see what sticks because they know they cannot afford to do TV and they have no leverage. They have no leverage with any TV partner. So what are you going to do? I don't see how you can make it work with the two major conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, that far ahead of everybody money-wise. How can you keep up if you're not even being looked at? It's not even as much about the money as it is about the fact that nobody's looking at you. So if they're not seeing you suffer in recruiting, you're already way behind on money, then what?
Well, one of the things that was just wild to me was whenever they were giving their evaluations of what they thought they would be worth. And I'm like, look, I understand you're going to be worth multiple millions worth of dollars. There are eyeballs watching, right? Like Utah. Sure. I must admit, I got a little bit of a soft spot for Kyle Whittingham and the Utes, right? Every year, disciplined team, hard-nosed football. You know what you're going to get. That's a lunch pail football program. And it's just a fun
top
program.
5 coach in the country, man. No doubt about it.
Hey, as far as yeah, no doubt about it, right? And y'all, but that's just you know what they're going to do, right? Like it's just going to be a hard-nosed team.
Oregon, week in, week out. Oregon,
exactly, big brand. Washington, I loved watching Washington this year. They were so much fun, but I think a lot of people would ask the question, okay, well, if the Pac-12 is in so much trouble because 2 teams leave, how in the world is the Big 12 surviving whenever 2 of the largest brands in college football exit stage right in Texas and Oklahoma? And I've got an easy answer for you. The Big 12 picked up the phone immediately and said, Cincy, UCF, Houston, and BYU, come on down. I could be wrong, Hightop. If I am, please correct me. Last time I checked, student population, and this is from 2020, states it's 70,000-ish at UCF. Massive institution. I mean, I think they're the largest student body.
The largest student body, yeah.
In Florida.
I wouldn't be surprised. I can't quote confirm nor deny, but yes, Orlando is massive, so I wouldn't be shocked if it's bigger, to be honest with you.
Yeah, just pointing making the picture that this has there's a lot of eyeballs for UCF.
Yeah,
right?
UCF is, look, they did, and I made a video, kind of like a conspiracy theory video, as a short of when they claimed to be national champions, when they went undefeated that year, right? After that, they sold a ton of merch, and obviously, look what they've done since then in recruiting, their ability to compete, and now go to the Big 12. They've up until last year, they're playing, for their conference championship. They've been able to they've stolen a few guys from the Gators. The whole idea of the concept of the video was just one big marketing scheme, because everybody knew who UCF was. And you've got billboards in Orlando saying we're national champions. According to the book, you kind of are, right? And so they did a great job of capitalizing on their one undefeated season and have really rode that high. And now you're in the Big 12, and now you're gonna actually have a true conversation, and you've got the Big 12 backing you versus what you were in the Conference America, whatever they were in.
That's a fantastic point. And I didn't even think about that, but that is a fantastic point. Then you look at Cincy, they were just in the playoffs. Forget what happened. They made it to the dance. And one thing is being proved, it's very hard to get there. BYU is good to upset anybody's season at any given year, right? And Houston, huge market. So did they get the biggest teams?
Great basketball schools too.
Boom.
Houston is.
They didn't get the biggest teams, but they got teams that could help them continue staying afloat. What is the Pac-12's next move? I think is a long-winded way of getting into this point. The Big 12 picked up the phone, 4 teams. As far as I know, the San Diego State University deal is not going well for the Pac-12, and nor is the SMU deal. What's it going to take for the Pac-12 to be saved?
I think you got to
dismantle.
Dismantle, yeah.
Call it a wrap.
I think they're toast, man. I think they are. I don't see any way that, because even if in the short term somehow they pull together some kind of deal that gets them to the next deal, right? I was talking about this on my live last night. Like, say you're going to just try to get 4 more years and go somewhere. Where are you going to build any kind of value there, though? How do you build that? And especially when you have Oregon and Washington with 1 foot out the door, as soon as somebody shows up at the Big Ten and says, hey, we're ready for you now, when SC and UCLA get sick of having to travel all the time to the Midwest, and they want to have a few games at least.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, to me, it's one of those things that you've got no matter what, even if you survive in the short term, how can you in the long term, right? You're not going to build any, if you're only streaming, and it's going to cost everybody $100 a month, $100 for the platform or whatever, whether it's Apple or however they do it. And ESPN,
Apple's like $5 a month, I think.
Yeah, I think they said it's $100 flat fee or something like that to do.
Oh, really? To watch the games?
To do or that's what they were talking about. That's what they did with MLS. It's what they did with MLS. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that's, I don't know. That could just be speculation, of course, but that's the whole thing. Is none of this and the stuff that is getting out, and like you even have, like I said, these quote unquote, high level journalists, columnists and stuff from major papers. They're obviously Pac-12 homers, but they're even saying things like the one thing was, yeah.
That's a great comment.
That's my Gator. It's my Gator gang in there, but we don't play games.
That's a great comment. That's a great comment.
We keep it spicy. You know what I'm saying? We got to look. It was Utah though. I'm going to cut you off. I know you're kind of on a roll here.
No, go.
Okay,
no, for real.
Utah, obviously great people, because leading up to it, you have a month to talk smack about game 1, right? Like that's all you've got, especially playing against a team in the Pac-12 who we never play. So all we're doing is just running our mouths. I talked a ton of smack, and so did Utah. In the middle of the game, my Twitter was exploding. I was adding every Utah page, Twitter page, boom, 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 just like clipping this, yelling, screaming, etc. And I talked a lot of shit. And then afterwards, after the dust settled, I went back and apologized to some of the Utah fans. And the Utah fans were like, no, it was fun. Like, we enjoyed it. Like, there's like a mutual love between us and Utah. Like, I've actually reached out because we're going to Utah. And I was like, hey, like, I know they blocked me. The podcast blocked me. And I go, hey, like, you can't take who I was during game week. Like that doesn't count. I'm not that bad. It's just all is fair when in the middle of battle.
Well,
so
and they shouldn't get too. I mean, they shouldn't be so sensitive after the way they've been acting lately too.
Sure, yeah. No, they've gotten a lot more cocky after that game for sure.
Right. No, but I mean, even just about this whole moving. I mean, it's to me, I don't see how you can hold it together. That was the whole point I was trying to make. Was that I just don't see that you can, and particularly if your answer to losing SC and UCLA and trying to bump this money up, say, is we're going to add SDSU and SMU, these guys aren't moving the needle. And I'm not hating on either one of these programs.
No.
But they're not moving the needle.
They're not the same caliber of UCF or Cincinnati. They're basically just fillers. Not. You're just literally just filling a spot. Like,
or even BYU. Listen, BYU is the real deal too. BYU
carries weight.
Absolutely, they do. It's
Zach
almost
Wilson,
like
baby.
Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good one. F is for Fanatics. Thank you so much for the $4.99 saying, what's up? Thank you for joining in. Everybody in chat, thank you for joining in. He says, got podcast royalty on with Shelton from Hightop Sports. Man, I can't tell you how excited I am to have him on. I've been trying to get him on we've been planning it for a while, but I've in the process of getting engaged and my schedule is all over the place. So it took longer than it should have, but we're going to make the most of it right now. I think the thing that I think is so bleak about all of this is that I try and be an optimist, not a sunshine pumper, but an optimist, right? Like I try and always look at, okay, this is what it is, but how can we move forward from this? I agree with both of you in that I don't really see a moving forward from this. And the PG show, friend of the show, makes a point. He says Utah, ASU, AZ, CU, all to the Big 12 within the next season. The Utah one would make a ton of sense getting in that rivalry, BYU.
Yeah, you got to have the Holy War. Yeah, why not?
Fun. That would be huge. And the Big 12 is hungry. We know both of those to be true. I just don't see a future for the Pac. And I think that's very bleak for a Pac-12 fan. But
look at the best games last year for the Pac-12. What were the biggest games for the Pac-12? It was Oregon and Georgia, which ended up being embarrassing. It was Florida and Utah, which ended up being embarrassing for the Pac-12. It was,
and then Tulane was a chance to write it.
The highest rated one was obviously UCLA and SC,
so I was gonna end with that. So then it was USC and Notre Dame was the other big one, right? When Notre Dame's not in the Pac-12, and then it was obviously USC and UCLA. And to be fair, I watched that game and turned it on, and we I don't remember if it was precast, but the fans, they didn't even feel like it was that exciting of a game when you turned it on.
Rose Bowl, which was surprising. Yeah,
and it was the reason I probably was the most watched game. Because the game was on at 10 o'clock at night. Everything else was over. It was competing with absolutely nothing. So, yes, that was my last part. Is the only big game was USC and UCLA, and both of those guys are leaving. When I think of Pac-12, I think of USC. Everybody jokes around saying that Bama is the face of SEC, and sure, they have been at the helm for a very long time. If, for any reason, Bama were to leave the SEC, the SEC would be perfectly fine. You've got Georgia running things. Tennessee's obviously up and coming. Florida has a phenomenal fan base, right? LSU has an incredible fan base. All of them have wild fan bases. Just out west in general, it's just not really big football country, honestly. You got pockets, don't get me wrong, but nowhere near what the SEC is. And so when you got your guys like USC, who's just a powerhouse of a school, and UCLA is just that there's a lot of history there, leaving, it's over. Yeah, I don't think. Look, go back to that real quick about the Coach Prime. Here's the thing. It was funny when Coach Prime went to Colorado. Everybody was like, I didn't even realize Colorado was in the Pac-12. So no, I get.
Well, that's because they've had one winning season since they got there.
Yeah, so nobody even can. Now they're connecting to the Pac-12. It's like, we got Coach Prime. It's like, bro, last year you wouldn't even claim them. Like nobody. We're looking at Colorado. It's like, what are they in?
Yeah, you know who was the one that doing the most of that? George Kliavkoff. That guy was over there acting like he was in on it early and all this stuff. It was so silly. But and I got to tell you, I think that they would be so much better off if they were in the Big 12 because of the Texas recruiting, the fact that he coached high school football in Dallas. And they're a Big 12. They used to be Big 8. They used to be Big 12. So, and that was the time that they were the best. Going back to what you were saying about that UCLA and USC game, that was equaled by TCU and K-State. The number of people watching that equaled by TCU and K-State.
The championship game or just TCU and K-State like normal game?
The normal game.
Oh, jeez.
That's bleak.
I didn't watch TCU and K-State normal game. So I watched the USC UCLA game. And the reason I watched that game is because I was big on USC last year. I think USC being good is great for college football. So I was a big fan of USC being good because we need somebody to hate. And so we needed somebody out west to hate. Like, it's hard, like, obviously Bama, but if Bama's in it, I'm going to go for Bama and cheer for the SEC. So it's not like I don't hate Bama and like that. So they're kind of carrying the weight for the SEC. So I need somebody like a USC. Oklahoma, they're kind of that guy, but Oklahoma just is kind of they weren't really doing it for me when Lincoln Riley was there. They were kind of getting clapped. So USC needs to get it going. So I need somebody to hate.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. But
while Lincoln's there, they're not going to play defense. So
that's the part that I think is interesting. But
you don't have to in the Pac-12.
True. Speaking of Coach Prime, he got a big win in the transfer portal, and he has been stacking big wins in the transfer portal. What's interesting, though, is he pulls Jimmy Horn Jr. and Xavier Weaver, both from USF.
Yeah.
That's going to be a dynamic duo
Dude,
at
those
wide
guys are
receiver.
badasses.
They are.
And Travis Hunter. I mean, he plays wide receiver as well,
everywhere.
too. They have him tagged as a wide receiver on 3, actually.
Do they have him?
Yeah, if you go look at on 3 Rainy, they have him as a wide receiver.
Jay in Unfair Sports keeps saying that he thinks he's going to. That he's going to be playing wide receiver more.
If you watch the championship game in Jackson State, I mean, he was balling.
Mm-hmm.
He was getting burned. He was getting burned at quarterback.
So I think what it is he's so supremely athletic. He's relied on the athleticism when playing cornerback, right?
Sure.
And he's going to be just fine, right? If he just puts his head down one off season's like, I'm a dedicate to corner, he can come out and just be shut down. No question.
He's so fast, man.
He can transition to wide receiver very naturally with that athleticism. And you saw it. I think that's a great point, what he did in the game. But whenever I looked at what Colorado was doing top to bottom, I mean, let's look at some of the additions they've had in the portal. You have Cavassier Smoke. On the offensive line, you have Yusef Mergabil from Florida. You have Tyler Brown, Landon Beebe, Savion Washington. Interesting note on Washington, he comes from Kent State following Sean Lewis. So in theory, you would really like that offensive line transfer as well, because the offensive coordinator has the familiarity. Of course, you have Shadur Sanders. Guys, a name I love. Watch out. Saduye Troye. This kid is going to, came
top
in
10 tight end.
With PPI recruits. PPI recruits goes all around the world, finding kids from different countries, brings them to the United States, and they always get big offers. A few years ago, Hero Canoe played 3 games and had 36 offers from Division I colleges in 3 games of high school football. He's now at Ohio State. They have another tight end at A&M, and now we have Traore playing tight end at Colorado.
You got to get from London, too, the linebacker.
Yep.
Man,
it's a super cool deal.
This is going and finding these amazing athletes all over the world and stuff, man.
Brandon Collier's the guy's name, and I'm really I've messaged Seydu on Twitter, and we've talked briefly back and forth. I want to get him on the show. I really want to get Brandon Collier on the show. I think what he's doing is awesome. But Traore, mismatch at the tight end position, real natural route runner. I kind of want to hear from both of you. We can talk about what Coach Prime has done in recruiting, and I think everybody knows about that, but his use of the transfer portal thus far has netted them the #1 ranking in transfer portal acquisitions. What stands out to you from a transfer portal acquisition standpoint? Hightop, I'll start with you.
What do you mean what stands out?
Like what stands out whenever you look at his transfer portal acquisitions? What acquisitions do you look at and you're like, that's someone that I think people need to be aware of. That's someone who's really going to help contribute to moving the needle for the Buffaloes in 2023.
I mean, look, I think his Louis bags that he brought in. I think Hunter, his son Shador is a big one, and I think Smoke, the Kavius Smoke, the running back from Kentucky. I'm familiar with him because he ran all over Florida in week 2, I believe, because Christopher Rodriguez was out. So Kavius Smoke, SEC talent. He has a lot of SEC talent on defense as well, too, which is interesting because we just talked about, or I said the Pac-12 doesn't play defense. He went and got, I think, a lineman and a few safeties and cornerbacks from Ole Miss, Mississippi State. And I've always been a big component. I mean, you being a, Bama fan, you understand that SEC talent, in my opinion, is above par to anybody else. So I feel like they're going to be able to go and transition nicely. Mohamed Abidi, he was a linebacker who transferred from Florida to Utah, had an incredible year at Utah. And again, I think playing at those schools, I mean, I think they're able to excel a lot more. They stand out. So those are a few small pieces that I think he's putting together. Yusuf, the O lineman from Florida, honestly don't know too much about him. He was a Mullen guy, so I don't know. He didn't play at all. But it's interesting to see. We lost 3 offensive linemen. We lost more than that, but 3 that I can recall right now is Tarquin, Yusuf, and then one more. Tarquin and the other one both went to USC, and Yusuf went to Colorado. And everyone's like, kind of was like, oh, why they leave? It's like, well, look at that offense. Look at both style of offense, right? Very heavy passing, very pro style offense in USC and in Colorado with Shador. So they fit those schemes a lot better. And I think that And that's what Mullen was trying to do. That doesn't fit Billy's scheme. So I think he got to go in and use it, even though we haven't seen too much from him.
Yeah, I'm excited about him. And look, one of the things I told someone, because when I made the video on it, someone commented, they were like, yeah, but he never played. So is this really a win? And I was like, would Colorado have gotten him absent Coach Prime being there and all of this hype? If the answer is no, then this is a big win, right?
4-star offensive lineman. They hadn't got a 4-star up until this past year. Like that's
exactly.
If they get that kid coming out of high school, everyone's losing their mind. That's a massive get. Massive get. Look, we get a lot of hooked up into these stars, and I get frustrated kind of talking about it as well too, because the stars are just there has to be a rule in place, and I don't want to sit here and knock on 3, 2, and 4, 7, but I find myself doing it anyways. They've got a job to do. I understand that, but there definitely is some bias there, as there is on everything.
They miss a lot too.
They miss things, and from 1 to 200, and I was actually talking about it with Austin Barber, who's an offensive lineman for Florida. 1 to 150. The margin's this, right? The stars now are going to help with their NIL, which is big. So obviously it means a lot to these kids, even more than what it did before. But we've seen plenty of lower end stars have a great success just based on development. So we can't get too caught up in it. But I think Yusuf fits that scheme. And if you understand what Deion is doing and what Mullen was doing and realize the connection, you're like, wow, that's a great pull. Like, he's not just pulling guys out of thin air. Like, it's making sense and fitting into his system.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Jason, what stands out to you? Same question.
I'll tell you, when you pull the number 1 cornerback in the country 2 years in a row, that stands out to me. Cormani McClain, he flipped them both from Florida schools, one from Miami, one from Florida State. And I mean, good grief. These guys are whereas I was talking about, and I actually have a video coming out here in a few minutes about this same thing. So, but we're talking about, you've got these 2 guys. You've also got, obviously with Demoy Kennedy coming over from Alabama. I mean, they got the guy from Oklahoma, actually, that where was he?
Yeah, I like the Demoy Kennedy one.
Demoy Kennedy, man. I mean, the bottom line is that whereas you had Lincoln last year, he went over there and he did great with what he did at USC. Just probably had about the same amount of recruits. Right now, you're at what, 25 transfer guys going to Colorado. Yeah, it's 40 overall recruits that they've swapped out. This is not the same football team. Everybody's talking about, well, you got to see them prove it first. Not only that, you've got amazing coaches. Sean Lewis is one of the most respected offensive minds in the country. He was a head coach at Kent State. He put up more points on freaking Bama or on Georgia than TCU did. Of course, you know how it is. But bottom line, and I'm just messing around on that. But really, this guy's the real deal. Shedeur loves him. And Shedeur, he kind of looks a lot like Caleb Williams in that respect. They've got, you were talking about Smoke coming in. That kid is unreal. They've got a freshman coming in that
the fastest running back in the
had Dylan Edwards, 800 yards or some crap like that, all-purpose yards a year ago. And he's not one of the top rated. I mean, he's like 10th rated or something like that running back.
Yeah, he was a 4-star. He was low. He's tiny. Size. That's what I'm saying. These stars thing, like that's what that's what happens.
I look at production and I'm saying, how do you not? I mean, anyway, for a guy like Coach Prime, perfect pick up there. Then you go and, like you guys were just saying, you go and you get these guys from USF. These are, I mean, stud receivers. They're the real, and Shedeur's the real deal. He really is. But the difference in them in USC is they're going to play defense. They also went and got Charles Kelly. You've talked about that, Ty, on your show a bunch, that the guy is, I mean, do you not feel like he probably would have been the DC had he hung around?
I don't think so.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think he would have been. I think Saban really liked him at safeties coach. He's been defensive coordinator at locations, and he hasn't put together bad defenses, but they haven't been the over the moon.
Those ones, yeah.
But I'll tell you what the combination is that I like with Colorado. Not only do you have Kelly, who is a fantastic recruiter. I mean, you want to talk about who Saban would just send. Okay, we're in a tough battle with Florida. We're in a tough battle with Georgia. Get Coach Kelly out there, and we'll see how they're feeling after. I mean, he was an ace. You look at the guys he landed, Will Anderson. I mean, it goes on and on. But not only did they get him, the addition of Mike Zimmer, and they brought over the defensive coordinator they had at Jackson State.
Yeah.
That guy had them as the number one
Hound
scoring
dogs.
defense in all of college football. Even if
Ball.
we related them to Power 5, they had less points scored on them than Georgia or Illinois. So really interesting stuff right there. But yeah, Charles Kelly, fantastic coach, really good coach.
Yeah, and I just feel like it's like all the things that people and I get it. You know, he's loud, he's boisterous. A lot of people are, you know, it turns them off. And just like you're seeing right here from Neo here, talking about encouraging them to get on YouTube or TikTok or whatever. And you know, that's part of the game now. And that's how you do make money in college football, is to be an influencer. And if you're around Coach Prime and you're not taking advantage of that, then what are you doing? That being said, and it's time to play football, if you noticed the way that he is, it's all discipline all the time. Have a phone in there. Have a phone anywhere around where he can see it. You know, come into a meeting with the phone. You know, be wearing a hat. You know, sag your jeans. Something. I mean, it's not like it's just a bunch of undisciplined stuff that's going on. If you watched any of this stuff while he was at Jackson State, they don't mess around with those kids. They flat out don't. And you got a bunch of great coaches. For whatever he may lack as a coach, he makes up for it in recruiting and then hiring coaches that know what the hell they're doing.
I've been in this Deion battle for a while. I was actually talking with somebody today about it because I get a lot of flack for it, especially being a Gator fan. Because I think I love what Deion's doing. I think was doing.
I do as well.
Neos,
in fairness,
yeah. It's phenomenal. It's fun to watch.
I think it's great. I love it. Yeah.
So to Neo's comments, is one thing that hasn't worried about Colorado is Coach Prime's encouraging these boys to get on YouTube and TikTok and get their money. My question is why? Because if they're not doing that, then what are they doing? Right? What you don't understand is that's where we're headed in this world. Like, he's teaching them business. Yeah. He's teaching them, hey, go out there, create content, and then when you're at home, learn how to edit, post it, right? Learn how to land brand deals. Right. That's what he's doing. He's teaching them business. If not, they're going to go home and play video games. These are kids. They're 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids.
Or get in trouble. You know?
I think another important distinction here is, if anybody heard Prime talk about NIL, he was talking about how the future of NIL is not going to be collectives as he sees it. And something Josh Pate talked about as well. He thinks that as it moves, it'll go away from collectives. At the point where it goes away from collectives, the people who are set up the best are your guys that have a presence on Twitter, TikTok. I think one of the greatest examples is Evan Stewart, right? Evan Stewart, coming out of high school, was not only one of the best players in the nation, he had a massive TikTok following. And so it was kind of a perfect time period. NIL just announced, really just legalized, and he's a great example of what happens whenever a player has a massive following and how they can continue to profit. And it's not affecting his game. Evan Stewart is going to be a dude for Texas A&M. If they can figure out a way to get him the ball, he's got all the ability you could want. It's just about getting on football. He says they're not working on football. He only has the first few hours to say.
These guys are on social media either way, no matter what. Neo, come on.
Yeah, they're going to be there either way, and they don't have much time for much else, man. The schedule of a college football player is absolutely insane, and it's one of the reasons why. Whenever I've said this story before, but I'm going to say it again. Whenever I was in college, I was doing moot court for University of North Texas. I got to travel all across the country doing simulated Supreme Court trials. I got to compete at UCF's campus, at SC's campus, at Ohio State's campus, all these different places. But one of the things that rubbed me the wrong way is that I could then go to a local high school and coach their debate teams. They could pay me to do a debate coaching seminar there. All of my stuff that I did for UNT was paid for by the university. They paid for all my flights. They paid for all of my Ubers. They paid for all of my food. How could I profit off of my name, image, and likeness when I wasn't making the university a fraction of the money that the football team was? And I had friends on that football team that they had to account for what they were eating to make sure that it wasn't an impermissible benefit. That doesn't make sense to me. Like that rubs me the wrong way. And having these guys be able to make their own brands, I think that's a great thing for college football. I just don't see a net negative, and I can assure you, Neo, they are working hard on football. They're working hard.
Watch what you see on YouTube a little bit, because I'm going to tell you, they don't. And go back and watch some of the stuff from Jackson State. If you think that those guys get away with anything, they don't. He's harder on those guys than it. And I agree with you, PG. I watch your show all the time. I agree. These guys, Coach Prime is not. This is not just a let them, do whatever the hell they want and hang out and make content. Their job is to do their job, and that includes his kids. That includes his own kids. I mean, a lot of people think he's soft on them. He isn't. I just don't see any. I don't see anything wrong with it. And the bottom line is we can keep kicking and screaming about this all you want to. It's still here. It's not going anywhere.
He's coming.
And he's coming. Yeah, and you might as well. But I mean, you might as well get on board with the NIL stuff, because you're not going to stop paying him. It's just not going to happen. So you got to have them. They've got to have time to do it. But they're going to spend a hell of a lot less time on TikTok and YouTube and places like that than what they're going to be spending if they had to, go out and like work for somebody or whatever. I mean, bottom line, you couldn't do that.
Here's the great thing
they're
too.
They're on there anyway.
What they can capitalize on with being in college, there's plenty of kids that are in the film industry at their school that want to get into creating content.
Boom.
The football player goes to the kid. It's like, hey, so-and-so, come follow me around for the day. You're going to edit my content. Whatever we make, I'll give you 20% of it. And now you got two college kids working together, building a brand on what they both love. It's a no-brainer. So that's where it's like they're not just sitting there playing on their phone like just with Snapchat. Like it's if you're not grasping it and understanding that it's a bigger business, because not all these kids are going to go to the NFL. And what happens is they go hard and so invested into into college football,
Absolutely.
and then they look up and they don't go pro, and it's like, well, now what? I feel what Coach
those
Prime is
guys
doing
are
is
still
teaching them
1% of the population that get to the NFL. You know what I mean? It's still 1%.
That's why I love it. I think he's building business. And that's why I always talk about with Coach Billy. He has his Gatorade program, is what they call it, or Gatorade, excuse me. And everyone's like, oh, who cares about the Gatorade program? The kids that truly understand, like, hey, not all of us are going to make it, understand that the value in that program in building, hey, not just football players, but businessmen as well.
Yeah, I love that. Now, this is the last comment, and then that's a perfect segue for our next topic. But I did want to address this. Dean says, look what happened to Jimbo Fisher the year after he promised those players. They transferred out the following year. Dean, I know some stuff that happened at Texas A&M, and it is not the same thing.
Not even close.
It is a world of difference. And I know, look, I don't want to dox myself, right? But I live in a big city. I grew up right down the street from when Deion, when he lived in Prosper. Yep. When I would be on the bus. Now, Jason, you'll like this one. The old country song, The Boys of Fall, right? Written by, I forget who it was by, but it's about Salina football. Well, growing up, I played Salina. My freshman year of high school football, I played Salina, right? And they're known, Hightop in Texas. They're known. They're a small school, like super small town, country town.
They win a lot of championships, don't they?
And they are massive. Like, it doesn't even look like they should be in high school.
Corn-fed country boys.
It is. We had two kids from my team, from a class of 160, make it to the NFL, which statistically is not normal, right? They look tiny compared to Salina, and we got whooped. I say all of this to kind of let it be known, right? That one, whenever you're talking about these massive differences, right, in such a program like I was at, Gainesville, compared to Salina. Imagine Texas A&M is Salina. They have all of the attention on them. Colorado is Gainesville. They're going to be building. They're going to be improving. Salina has a microscope, and it gets to a point where Jimbo wasn't exactly known for his discipline. Right. Yeah. I say all of this also
to say smoking weed in South Carolina in the locker room.
I say all of this to also say that I drove by Deion's house in Prosper every time we would play Salina. And I know people that have worked with him. He's not about no discipline. You said it earlier. He's about his discipline. But Florida.
Can I address this last thing that he said? And then we can go from there. being individuals in a team environment, you know what? They do everything together. That's the whole thing about this. They do everything. They have somebody who knows her social media that works with them on it so that they can get it right. The other thing that I noticed, I don't know if you guys saw this, but he even is trying to help his coaches do better money-wise so that they never had to worry about money. He had a financial advisor, a big money financial advisor come in. They had a 2-hour thing in with all the coaches just on how they could do certain things with their taxes, with their own business kind of stuff. Being individual coaches, you're your own business. They don't do anything individually. That's not what this is not what this is a family environment that he may have kicked a lot of kids out of Colorado, but his family is his family, and that's how it is. So I don't think that you're paying, I don't think that you're watching them and you're just making these assumptions, because I just don't see that that's what's happening whatsoever.
I think what it is also is it's such a big sweeping change with the way college football is going to be presented. So I think it's also natural when there are people who are like, oh, well, this is just so different. But I don't think different is bad. And as y'all could probably tell, I got a little bit I saw a comment that threw me for a loop, and I got a little bit lost in the midst of my story. And then we found our way back home. Y'all don't worry about that, though. Y'all don't worry about that. But Florida hires a new defensive coordinator, Austin Armstrong. Yep, visors coming out. Before I pass it over, I wanted to give some quick talking points on Austin Armstrong. Young coach, has not coached long, but in the brief stint he has, his defense, which was nicknamed the Nasty Bunch, by the way, at Southern Miss, was top 10 in the following categories at some point during the course of his 2 years. Tackles per loss per game, sacks per game, interceptions, stuffing teams on fourth down, top 10 in the country in first downs allowed, and number 6 in red zone defense. Guys, Alabama played Southern Miss, and I'll never forget, there was a press conference and Saban was talking about Armstrong, saying like, hey, this guy does some really good stuff. Like, we're going to have to be disciplined the way they attack. I mean, one, it's Saban. He gives the same speech for Kent State that he gives against Georgia, right? He'll rip a reporter for being like, oh, y'all are going to kill Kent State. Oh, well, we got Louisiana came in here and ran through us like shit to a thin can. Y'all know the speech. But this is an interesting hire, right? I've seen some people not high on it because he doesn't have the Power 5 experience. Personally, I think we're going to look in a few years and say Billy got a good one. I think there's no better place. Take the floor, man. Take the floor. Let us know what you're thinking about this, Hightop.
I'm loving it. Look, I think Patrick Toney, everyone was calling for his head last year. I'm not like excited to see Patrick Toney go. I'm not in that camp by any stretch, which for those of you who don't know, that was our DC. I wanted to see him go another year, but I'm very optimistic anyways. But we got some digging. We unpacked Armstrong. I'm excited. I think obviously a lot of the concerns is everyone's like, who is this guy? He's 29 years old. Can he really do this job? Here's why I love that. Myself being a young guy, kind of always battled against that of, can you handle this? Can you do that? Whatever. Look, we being the young guy into the field, yes, we have our flaws. Yes, we have our things that we have to overcome. But Sean McVay is another one that they, another young coach where they bring a special pizzazz, in my opinion. They bring a different perspective on it. There's a sense of fearless, right? It's ignorance is bliss. You don't know enough.
Love it. Yeah.
Right. So you kind of just go blindly at it because you haven't been around to make the mistakes to get burned. So you're okay with making the mistakes. And sometimes it's not necessarily a mistake. The other guys who made them, they got burned by it. It's just, you got beat. You didn't get burned. You just got beat. And now you're afraid to try it again. Where the young guy's not afraid to try it. And now he'll win and it works out. And now he's the confidence to get it done. And I think that's what he's going to bring in. I think he has his charisma about himself. I talked about this too. And it sounds crazy, but I'm in sales, and his tonality, the way that he talks, the way that he breaks down film, it's very important, in my opinion, especially when you're talking to 18, 17-year-old kids. When you're breaking down film, if you can make it to where they can understand 2 or 3 things when they're on the field and they can go watch that and do this, AB does this, I do that, and simplify the game for these guys and slow it down for them, that's how you excel. That's why Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs make the field feel smaller, right? And like I said, yes, I understand they're getting top-tier talent. Those 4 and 5 stars are not light years ahead of what they make it seem like they are. It's just they're able to break it down for these kids so they can digest it and then perform on the field. Tonality has a lot to do with that. When you hear Kirby Smart talk, when you hear him break down a press conference, he grabs your attention. When Nick Saban talks, just like Billy, you fall asleep at the mic. Let's be honest, because you know what they're going to say.
Unless he's ripping a reporter, yeah.
Unless he's ripping a reporter and he gets rowdy, sure. But for the most part, you kind of just you get like a little bit of a saggy eye, right? The same, just basic black and white stuff, and you get lost in the mix. When Kirby hits the mic, you just feel it, right? And it grabs your attention. It's all these guys, Gary Vee, Tony Robbins. That's why they're in the field that they are, because they can grab your attention and make you buy into something. This what's his face? Armstrong, they're salespeople. He's got to be a sales guy. He's got to sell his kids on him and his process. Being able to have that tonality and be able to deliver it in a way that you can digest it has an impact on that. So that's one thing that I noticed. Obviously, the stats that you just said. Me, I'm not a big stat guy. There's plenty of guys that do stats. I look at them. I use them as arguments, but I'm more of a people guy, right? So I look at, again, posture, tonality, how they carry themselves. To me, that's what's going to translate to the kids, which then produces the numbers, right? And everyone goes straight to the numbers because it's very easy to look at. It's very black and white. You can't really argue with it. And the things that I look for when I interview the kids that are coming in, you can't put that on paper. You can't put a star behind that. And I'm not an expert by any stretch. Don't get it twisted. I can't catch every bad egg, but I do take that is something that I pride myself on, as being able to understand somebody's quality and their personality.
F is for Fanatics with the $10 saying, I watched 2 Southern Miss games last night. You get a lot of pressure, a lot of man-to-man, great tackling. Yeah, you are going to get a lot of man-to-man. And with that comes some intriguing pass-off concepts that let them be so productive in interceptions. Now, one thing before I pass it to Jason, I love your point, man, about the simplifying. And I'm gonna tell you why that's so key. One of the biggest things right now in college football with these offenses are simplifying. And I get it. They look super complex. There's a lot of moving pieces. We talk about Lincoln Riley, right? You have half the field. Read that half the field. If your first read isn't there, go to number 2. If number 2 isn't there, take off. That's why he likes those mobile quarterbacks. And it's tough to stop. Whereas you have these defenses that have been so damn complex for so long. And that's why these simplistic offenses are just taking advantage. If you can simplify your defense, not necessarily in its theory, but in the way you convey it to those that need to learn it, aka how you teach it, that's where you can really see defensive improvements. And I love that about Armstrong. I think that's what makes this so good. And as far as like, I misread that. Yeah. But as far as the stats go, man, I completely agree with you. I use stats a lot whenever I've watched the film first. And then
I'm not hating on it. I'm not hating on it. I think it's needed.
But I think you have a point. People go to stats and they think that's the end all be all.
It's not no, it isn't.
I always ask, what does the film say? Because if you watch the film and then you look at the stats and you're like, oh, I saw that, and that, then those are salient stats. Those are things where you're like, those are good. But if you watch the film and then you look at the stats and you're like, I don't know, that didn't really fly off to me. Well, then that stat may be a little fluff, right? It may not have
fabricated.
That weight. But I think F is for Fanatics. He hits it great right here. Those stats I talked about, they're reflected in what you see. The pressure, the man-to-man, all of that. Really, really exciting stuff for Austin
To give
Armstrong.
You a concept that F's Fanatics, he's big fan. He's Cody. He's a big Gator fan. That's our Discord. Like, that's how, like, when I talk about the difference between fan bases and just the devotion, like, we're out here watching film on a Thursday night on a Southern Miss game. Like, to understand what we got coming in, like in February.
What do I need to do to get added into that Discord?
It's a tie. Look, I don't want you to look at me different when you get into that Discord. It's a special kind of breed in that bad boy.
Hey, I'm a part of some Discords that I question my sanity partially. So I hear you.
Special group of guys. Hey, Neo, you kind of redeemed yourself here. I saw this. I'm glad you highlighted it, because when you commented, I was like, dude, I was getting pissed at Florida last year. We were not jamming at all. We were always off. And I agree. I think that it's a dog mentality.
Pissed me off about Oklahoma last year. Ooh.
Yeah. It's to me, it's a freebie, right? There's no, like, it's just, hey, go get angry, go get pissed off. That's all that is. Like, allow these kids to go and just ruffle these kids up. You're allowing these pretty boy wide receivers to get comfortable and get in their groove. Why? It's a no-brainer. Go knock on the.
A great example. Go back and watch, and it's funny. I was actually rewatching it today. Go back and rewatch that Kansas State Alabama game. The first quarter, Bama was playing such soft coverage on Kansas State that they were just moving the ball at will. Bama really at the back half of that second quarter, and especially in the third quarter, said, no, if you beat us deep, you beat us deep, but we're just jamming you at the line. They shut that down after that. I completely agree. Now, I think this is a great comment, and I want to circle back to it. Jason, I do want to get your input, though, on Austin Armstrong as the new defensive coordinator of the Florida Gators.
Hey, honestly, man, I think I think that obviously you kind of covered everything that needed to be said there. I like him. I think that he's coming in doing the right thing. I like what Hightop said about being a salesperson. I've been a salesperson for a long time myself, and you just kind of have to come across and you both kind of said it in a different way, but where you were talking about, it's just how you teach it. I mean, some of these defenses are definitely complex, but if it's complex to the kid to understand it is the problem.
It's not how complex it is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it just doesn't work. And when you're talking about, like with Lincoln's offense and stuff like that, it's about matchups. It's like, let's see who's going to win this matchup, a lot of the times, and that's why it never worked in the CFP, because then you start getting up against Alabama and Georgia's and stuff like that of the world. They've got guys out there in the secondary that can go up against your guys, and they're certainly going to get to your quarterback. So, no, I don't think that you can really go wrong with a guy that's been around it. And I mean, if you're getting from Nick and Kirby and guys like that, yeah, it'd be fine with me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
what a treat.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. It's why I feel about Dan Lanning. I think that he's a good hire.
Ooh, love that.
I think he's a great hire out there. I don't know that with what's going on in the Pac-12, it makes you kind of wonder what's going to happen. But I think the dude is going to be really good, man. I really do.
Another thing I really like about the Austin Armstrong thing, and I didn't say it and I should have, he has familiarity with Billy Napier. So it's one thing to say, okay, well, this guy hasn't coached on the Power 5 level. Okay. But whenever your head coach has seen him up close and personal, it kind of throws that he hasn't coached on the Power 5 level out the water, right? Because Saban wanted him enough to hire him as inside linebacker coach, and your head coach has worked with him before. At that point, hey, it makes complete sense to me. I did want to circle back to this.
Him and Tony all worked at Louisiana together.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew you were going to pull this. I knew you were going to pull this question up.
Well, because it's something I was really interested in just letting you riff today on the state of Florida and the Florida outlook, right? And when I say that, man, I'm just going to kind of pass it to you. What are you excited about? What are you concerned about? Just lay it all on the line for us, man, about your outlook for Florida.
Yeah, see, I'm not mad at you, Frank, because I understand why you asked the question.
He's not going to be on the hot seat.
Yeah, the hot seat thing is ridiculous to me. And he goes win one game. Can we talk about it then? Yeah, we won 6 and 7 last year with a hell of a schedule. This whole hot seat thing is ridiculous. We as Florida fans got to chill out and understand it's going to be a process. We keep trying to say well, Kirby did it in his second year. Kirby walked into a whole different type of situation there at Georgia. Not knocking Kirby, and people kind of take that, misguide that as well as I'm saying that Kirby's not great. Kirby's still great. Don't get it twisted. But he didn't walk into the shit show. Yeah, but he didn't walk into the shit show that Billy Napier walked into. So we have to understand that to revamp a culture, to rebuild a culture, it's going to take some time. So what do I consider a successful year? Progress. I got to see things change from last year. And I've got to be able to see, okay, with Anthony Richardson leaving, is Graham Mertz or Jack Miller, whoever takes it over, I believe it's probably more likely going to be Graham. Is he going to do a great job? We're going to see our new recruits coming in. How are they going to transition? How is a new DC going to adjust? Can we get a 3rd and 10 stop? We're going to call it, can we call it 3rd and visor? Are we getting big stops? If you go back and look at our 7 losses, right? Outside of the Oregon State game and the Vandy game, which in my opinion are 2 inexcusable losses. The Oregon State game was not an inexcusable loss. It was how we lost. People will kind of flack on that. Oregon State's no slouch. They were 9-3, ranked 16th, going up against 6-6 Florida. How that even worked out is beyond me. We should have played Oklahoma, and and Oregon State and FSU should have played, but I don't work for the committee, so it is what it is.
It was odd.
It was ridiculous. It didn't make any sense. You're giving 2 teams freebies basically. These are bowl games. These are supposed to be a playoff ideas, right? The Kentucky game, we're talking 2 to 3 plays of just of making the right decision on 3rd and long or getting 3rd down stops from Florida to win that game. Tennessee game, we were in it to the last play. We had a chance to tie it up or win it, whatever it may be. We went for 2, didn't get it. We're down by a touchdown instead of 3 points, right? And Billy kind of spoke to that. Loved his ideology on that. Georgia, we somehow made it a little bit of a tear. We're in it at the end. Florida State, who had probably the year of their best year in 5 years. We were in it up until the end. So any football season, when you're kind of on the up and up and you're working things out, it's 1 or 2 plays. Texas was 1 or 2 plays from being in the college football playoff as well too. USC was 1 or 2 plays from being in the college football playoff. So that's just we're 1 or 2 plays from going from 6-7 to 9-3. Like that in my opinion, that's how close it was. So could we go 6-7 next year? And would I consider that a failure? No, I really wouldn't. I wouldn't, just because of how brutal the schedule is. Once again, starting with Utah, brutal. Tennessee's coming to our house. Yeah. We have to go to LSU. Georgia's going to be obviously in Jacksonville. He's got Texas A&M. So look, we got FSU again. It's going to be a gauntlet, which I love it. For me, I enjoy it. I like the bloodbath week in, week out. It makes it fun. I kind of always flack on ACC. My co-host is an FSU fan. It's like, bro, like you get excited for like 3 games a year. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's no fun. So success is I got to see progress, better time management. Obviously, Billy had issues with managing the clock a few times. I think the running back room is going to look incredible. How do we do with the offensive line with a few guys coming out? I think the offensive line and running back room is definitely our strengths. The wide receiving core coming in is phenomenal. And then the D-line, I want to see what Big Des does. Chris McCallum, we've got a lot of great transfers coming in. And how does he manage that? How does he manage, obviously, his first transition season? How does he manage bringing in a lot of portal guys, attrition going out? Now it's his full season with his guys. And again, I'm sure I might get a flack of like, Mullen didn't bring in Clapp. Well, Mullen brought in guys to fit his scheme. Now he's got guys coming in to fit his scheme, his system. It's not a shot towards the Mullen guys. It's just these guys fit my scheme and they're going to make things work. So I need to see progress. This is kind of a short answer there.
I love that because I get people get a little bit annoyed with me sometimes.
It sounds like an Oklahoma assessment, to be honest with you.
And it's crazy because people get a little annoyed with me sometimes. They'll say, Ty, what do you need to see out of team X? And instead of giving them a win-loss total, my answer will be very, very similar to that. You have to be a better football program. I don't care if that comes in 10 wins, 8 wins, 9 wins. If I look at your team and say they played better football than the year before, that's all you can ask. And I love the point you made. You're not hating on what Georgia had whenever Kirby got there relative to what Billy had. I'm not trying to send a shot at Florida when I say this. You had a coach that straight up said on TV, I'll worry about recruiting when the season's over. You have to go against Kirby and Nick Saban with that attitude. Florida fans aren't going to stand for that. That's not something that you can step into and expect him to just hit the ground running. He did not. He inherited a program that has a Ferrari shell, but Dan Mullen left a Toyota Camry engine in it with stone tires. And now Billy's got to come
car analogies last night.
Were you really?
We were saying that Kirby showed up to it with a Ferrari parked in the driveway, and Billy showed up with a Pinto in the driveway.
But it's one of those things. It's like your program is like a Ferrari, right? Because it's Florida, your expectations, right?
Sure.
When you think of big brands in college football, Florida's up there.
The expectation is Ferrari.
But it's not a Ferrari right now. And because of that, corporate, I think you're right. I think the Sunbelt Billy deserves at least 3 years Sunbelt Billy.
Hey,
Sunbelt Billy, Group of 5 Billy.
We call him Ballsack Billy. Okay. All right, corporate duck.
Preach. Yeah, look, I just think that Florida's in such an interesting position. And that's why I didn't mean to cut you off when you first got started, but I wanted to say I don't think he's on the hot seat. Year 3. Let's come back year 3 and talk about hot seat. Jason, what are you thinking?
On Florida? Are we talking Florida or are we going Oklahoma now? Or
Florida.
Florida. I think that they needed help at quarterback. I think they needed help in a lot of places. What I was just saying, I felt like this was almost like making an assessment of what was going on at Oklahoma last year. You lost a lot of games right at the end of the game, 1-score games. One little thing could have made it go the other way. That's really the same thing that happened in Norman. I think my only question that I've got about what's going on at Florida is what was the whole Jaden Rashada deal, and why did that? Because and the reason I'm asking is because I think that where they struggled the most was at quarterback, and so and I don't know that who they got coming in there is not going to be a big help to that, but when you get offered that kind of money, what happens and then it just seemed like Billy he passed the buck a little bit there, which I know you kind of had to until they changed the rule recently. But I mean, it seems like you needed to stand up there and handle that.
Where did you read your information on that from?
I've read a lot of different stuff, but I mean, the last thing I got a lot of the stuff from The Athletic, places like that. I mean, I'll go ahead. Let me know what you're saying.
Yeah. And I was just kind of, because unfortunately, I work with the Gator Collective personally. We actually do a lot of work with them. So I say that like, obviously you can assume I'm biased or not, but I've asked Jen to be on so we could clear the air to have this conversation. As much as I work with them, I still keep it pretty biased. That's why I started my own thing, because I like to ramble off and do what I want. But obviously I'm so close with them, close with the writers, beat writers. Nick Delatorre from On3 had an incredible article breaking the entire thing down. Unfortunately, that article doesn't go viral, right? It's the ESPN articles, the New York Post articles, where they're taking tidbits and they're rolling it out. I also interviewed Chris Doring.
Yeah,
not sure
but
if
you saw some emails and some different stuff like that, though. I mean, you know what? It's just a question. It's like you were getting to see pieces of the email. And my only question is, it's not really about the collective so much that I'm concerned with. What I want to know is, how do you make that right if you're Billy Napier? Because at some point now he gets to deal with it now in the recruiting wars, and you know how that is. That's going to make it tough. I wondered what you felt about how is that going to make them. How does that affect Florida going forward when you have this hanging over your head, whether the reporting was right, wrong, whatever?
Yeah, you're great. Yeah, no, that's a great point. It doesn't really matter if it was right or wrong because it is out there. You're 100%.
Or to public opinion,
look, yeah. Look, it's unfortunately, it's just that's the main noise. I'm not too concerned about it, honestly. I think it's going to get brushed under the rug. I think if you get down and you get behind the grass and you see what actually happened and understand, like, okay, because again, guys from Florida were tweeting the payout of how the payout worked, and they're like, man, why can I get that money? And I think some of them were like, okay, I kind of understand. I'm kind of glad, like, because imagine that guy coming in making $13 million, that's pretty much that is confirmed. How's that going to impact the rest of the players? So if Billy did step in and say, hey, we're not doing this, or the correct answer, or actually what happened is the collective essentially said, hey, there's something that's not right here on the contract, and then it never got figured out, and I don't think anybody else pursued it, is kind of how it worked out. So look, all news is good news in a weird thing. And
in a weird way, you're right.
Yeah. The more you hear about it, the better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would agree that 13 million is an awful lot for a guy that hadn't played it down.
The whole thing is just, it's kit and caboodle. Yeah. It's uncanny, but it's not like it's so. What you understand is Billy wasn't offering that. That was a third party that offered that money. The same thing of what's happening in Miami. A third party is paying all these kids. And is what happened in Texas A&M is that exactly. More than likely, a bunch of third parties offered all these kids money, and now look what's happening. So how I look at it is probably Billy said, "Hey, we're not doing that." Billy came out on public record and said, "We're not getting into bidding wars," and probably found out what happened and said, "No, we're not. That's not how this is going to go down." When Rashada signed on December 21st, there was no deal in place, so he still signed for whatever reason he thought. But there was no deal in place when he signed in 21st, so he could have not signed.
Yeah, everything I've seen about what he wanted to play for Billy in that offense, he was very adamant what they were doing. Yeah, absolutely.
He was very adamant of playing for Florida. Again, I think it came where parents were involved heavily about it was a money deal. For the fact that you were going to go to Miami and Florida ended up at Arizona State, and this isn't a knock to Arizona State, but how do you fall all the way to fall? And again,
his dad went to school there is why he's there.
I get that, but
and plus
but you were from Florida to Miami. You were a top 3, top 5 quarterback prospect. He got his 5th star at the end there, and you go to Arizona State. Something's up. It's not adding up. And I'm not knocking on Jay. These are kids. I'm not trying to hear shit on these kids, but I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal as you think it is. I think this noise that we're seeing. I mean, Miami's in it. We were going to talk about it a little bit later, but Miami's in some noise now. There's going to be so many things that come out that this is going to look like Bush League in a month or two. That's how I look at it.
Well, I think that all this is kind of evolving anyway with the whole, I mean, as you're seeing, F4, F is for Fanatics was talking about the control that now some of these coaches, they don't get to pay them, but they get to kind of advise them and kind of work the deal with them or whatever. And so at least they got some kind of control. And that's what I've been saying. I think that Josh Pate, one of the things that I've liked the most about what he said was that you better get your house in order at the conference level, at the school level, and make this thing to where you're incentivizing these kids hanging around. The transfer portal is a bad deal. But if you don't know what the money is, and Jimbo's sitting over there screaming that he didn't know that no, we didn't pay no $30 million. What do you mean? How do you know? You know what I mean? Like, if you're not involved in it, you should know. He has
to claim he's not. Sure.
And of course, but it's not that he claimed that he didn't know. It was he didn't.
Threw a number.
He said, no, we did not. And he's standing on the damn table screaming about it and like picking at everybody who said anything about it. The whole, he said sliced bread so many times in that one press conference. It was stupid.
A forum user.
It was almost like that practice. This is like practice, man.
Talk about a game. Talk about a game.
Talk about a game.
Let me hop in here real quick. I'm sorry to cut you off, but F is for Fanatics. Thank you for the $5. This podcast is a jip, but this is a lot of fun. This is why I was looking forward to this. And guys, both of these guys can confirm. I just kind of sent them a message today and was like, "Hey, we'll run down these topics right here." That was it. So this is all just conversation in the moment with y'all.
I love to talk ball like this, so it's cool. Yeah.
But before I pass it back off to you, I want to say something in defense of Florida here for two things. One, I completely agree with this other comment by F is for Fanatics. Billy will have control now. Yeah, I agree with that, and I have a bone to pick with the way they rolled out NIL. I am a huge proponent of NIL, but you want to know what? I got a short for you, man. You want to know a video you should make. The way NIL came to be, you had NCAA versus Alston come down, and Jeff Kavanaugh, of all people, Justice Jeff Kavanaugh stated the NCAA's antitrust laws and structures were inherently unconstitutional and that there was not another business that could get away with the business model the NCAA has. He said, you're not paying people for the sake of not paying people. When they did that, guess what the NCAA figured out what to do 10 days later? Oh, NIL. But the problem is the states didn't have the same legislation. They didn't make it to where every state had equal playing grounds. They let the states decide. So institutions like Texas and Texas A&M were a step above the competition because Texas just took all restrictions out and said, go. Yeah. Other than being able to do it in high school.
Florida just passed the bill.
Exactly. Florida actually was crazy.
Who the hell's going to get in the way of the University of Texas or Texas A&M for that matter?
What's so crazy about that? Florida and Alabama actually were preemptive in their NIL legislation. Who did I say? Unfair. Who did I say? Did I not say Kavanaugh?
You said Jeff.
Brett Kavanaugh. Jeez, thank you so much. Brain is mush at this point. Thank you for that. That's embarrassing.
I didn't even catch it.
Yeah, that's embarrassing. But Florida and Alabama were preemptive in their NIL legislation. They came out and published NIL laws knowing, hey, this is going to come about, but it's not here yet. So whenever the NCAA legalized NIL, it was actually funny. Alabama and Florida, who thought they were doing good by their institutions and being preemptive, were actually handcuffed. And they were much more restrictive on what they could do in NIL than almost everywhere else. So it's been a whole debacle. Now, here's one reason why the second reason I'm going to defend Billy. Y'all got a dude in the class of 2024 committed in DJ Lagway. So And I did agree with you here, Jason. It's not a good look, right?
No,
even if the story is not right,
sure.
Even if the story, it's not.
I wasn't taking a shot. I was asking a question.
No. I knew you were. I knew you were. It's perception is reality. Look, right. If that's how you're perceiving it, whether it's right or wrong, doesn't really matter. But that's how you're consuming it. And unfortunately, that's how it's being passed around. To counter that, right? Like I look at, there's two options. We were already too much into the mud. The other option is he comes on. We're paying him $13 million. That, in my opinion, is even worse than how this happened. I take this any day of the week than paying that kid $13 million. And what would happen him coming into the locker room. Not a shot towards Jaden personally, just the logistics.
No, but when they start finding out what the number is and everything like that.
Did you see the breakdown of what's required of him or what was required of him?
I did not see that.
No, dude, he had to live in Gainesville.
We're doing a point system now. You get plus 100 points. I love that point because I agree completely. I'm such a big proponent of NIL. You want to talk about how to crash a locker room whenever you have that much of a disparagement between one NIL deal and the others. I completely agree with you. So my good sir,
I get a point.
Plus 100 points.
Can I get a scoreboard here, please?
Yeah.
It's like around the horn. It's like around the horn, baby.
We do it fancy over here. Instead of all that technology, we're taking it back to the old days. I got no cards for y'all.
Can you fax it to me? Can you fax me my score?
Yeah.
How much y'all want to go?
Hey.
I'm sorry. Passing it back off to you, man.
Cody's in there. He's got it. So he had to live in Gainesville, which signed 10 mini helmets. Like that's not a joke. It was 10 or 15 mini helmets for the year, and then it was like 3 engagements. 10 happy birthdays to booster kids. Okay, that wasn't real, but it was like 3 things. It was stay in Gainesville, 10 mini helmets signed, or just 10 memorabilia signed, and then like 3 engagements. And it was like it broke down to like $150,000 for the off season, a $500,000 signing bonus. It was unreal.
And that's the whole thing. Is like who just came up with this deal? I mean, you think he was asking for all that? Like, I want $13 million, and this is how we're going to break it down. I don't see that. So where did these folks come up with this at?
So he was getting paid apparently like 6 or 7 from Miami. And the way that the deal was supposed to be structured was we had to pay the Miami part off, plus we were giving him another 7.
Okay.
He signed a contract with Miami.
I did read that.
And for it to work out, we had to cover both, which then equals $13 million. And now he's not getting anything. He's playing Arizona State with a new head coach into a sinking Pac-12. I think.
Hey, you ever been to the parties out there? I mean,
it's the number one party school. It's a beautiful place.
Freaking
beautiful place.
Arizona State is like primo everything.
It's going to be interesting to see.
Primo everything.
But I just think that the negative press, while you would certainly rather it be positive press.
I didn't like what Jaden got to. He's still getting hit in the mouth a lot too.
Jaden got a shit end of the stick. Jaden got screwed. Yeah. I agree completely. I feel bad for Jaden because the one thing everyone was like, that kid doesn't deserve it. Well, Jaden didn't put his hand up and said, "Hey, can I get $13 million?" Somebody offered and he said yes, as we all would.
Well,
and that was a one big
no. Yeah,
yeah. Like don't get mad at the kid.
Blue blood, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like when people were all freaking out on him, I was like, "You had done the same damn thing. Like, what are you talking about? That's not on him." But
yeah,
you look at Dante Moore. He went from Notre Dame to Oregon, and then to UCLA.
He's a dog, bro. That kid's
bro. I was in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl.
He's good, bro.
It's not even there's arm talent of throwing it, that you got just a big arm, and then there's arm talent where you throw dudes open. You're staring down the barrel. I mean,
bro, Patty Mahomes
almost Seho was in his face 3 different times, like popping him, and he's touchdowns on him. I mean, he was just staring on
baseball.
He's a baller, dude. I've said that I'm happy with Jackson Arnold. I think it's going to be great for Oklahoma. If he's better than Dante, wow. Because I don't know.
Well, interestingly enough, whenever they were doing the All-American or the Elite 11 camps, Jackson won MVP. But did you see
Jackson
who was
Arnold?
coming? Yeah, Jackson Arnold won MVP, and they said he was unbelievable. But did you see who they said every time it was Jackson Arnold is 1A in this drill, 1B, and they were always like, I mean, a hair behind Jackson Arnold, Dante Moore. They said those two turns like every day of the Elite 11, those two were sensational. Like just
to do a callback, right? Where we're talking about those two guys and what you just said. but go look at the final results in 247 and On3 for quarterback rankings. It's Nico and Archer 1 and 2, and then Dante and Jackson Arnold. But what we just said, Jackson or
if those
Arch
guys are better,
Arch
if those guys
Arch
are better
didn't do
than
anything.
Dante,
Arch didn't do a single camp and never lost a spot. And Nico, I didn't see Nico at any Under Armour games, and he did a few 7-on-7 camps. But somehow that guy peaked towards the top at the end. I'm like, look, the thing with Nico and Arch, again, they get clicks. Dante Moore going to number one doesn't get clicks.
One's going to play
Jackson Arnold doesn't get clicks. Nobody cares he's going to Oklahoma. You know what I mean? Like Oklahoma isn't like clickable. Now I'm not ragging on it, but compared to those three, it's what's going to get clicks, what's going to get views. Arch Manning.
Well,
I don't disagree with that.
He's a Manning. But the thing is that, like, I mean, he was the Gatorade Player of the Year. I mean, he's getting love to some extent. But I agree that I mean, it's easy. It's easy to rank, right? It's easy to rank it for, and you've got 10 different freaking people that do it. So, and everybody looks for something different. All I was saying is, from what I could tell watching the dude in game action against All-Americans, if Jackson's better than him,
Dante and Jackson should be 1 and 2. I believe. I think Dante Moore should be number 1 without a shadow of a doubt. But back to the stars and why those stars are kind of manipulated, right?
It took a while before he finally got his fifth. Jackson didn't get his 5th star until, well, it was early in the season.
And I could throw a football and hit that football stadium from where I'm currently sitting. So you already know I've seen him and Peyton Bowen play more times than I can count. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And not only them, that Denton Ryan team that had Bear Alexander, Anthony Hill. Then they had Billy Bowman, Jatavian Sanders. That Denton Ryan team was wild with how much talent they have there that's playing D1 college football now.
How good must a freaking who was it that beat Geyer? It was, oh man, why is it skipping my mind? Who beat Geyer in one state
this year?
Yeah.
Oh God, was it? It wasn't Cedar. No.
It was.
Why can't I think of this?
I don't know. I'm having a brain fart myself. But anyway, they balled out, and they're who. That's who the wide receiver for Texas is playing for too. Come on, fellas. DeSoto, yes.
DeSoto,
bro. Did you watch that game?
I didn't watch that game, but I was at a 7-on-7. Man, if y'all ever get the opportunity, if y'all are ever in Texas, and there's 7-on-7 camps, let me know. We're gonna hit them. We're gonna hit them up because I got to go to that UA Next camp last year. It featured Jonte Cook, Jaden Wayne. There's a kid. He's young. He's with C4 Sports, who does a lot of work in the Texas, Oklahoma area. And I forget his name. I think it's Sperry is his last name. He's next. He's going to be stellar. But Jonte Cook was out there just styling on people. Ruben Owens was out there, the 5-star running back. And you knew right then he was going to be a dude. But, I kind of have found myself refocusing back on the topic of Florida. I found myself in your camp, Hightop, where I've been defending Billy. A lot. One of that is because a little bit of bias there as an Alabama fan, right? Like I want to see Billy Napier do good. Yeah, I want to see him do good. And you're not going to like this one. I want to see Mario do good. But
I hate that one.
Yeah, I know. We were best friends until that one came out of my mouth. And now I
gotta go.
My way back. Yeah.
I'm not sure that anybody in Miami likes him right now, though.
No, that's a good point. And we're going to get to that. But I did want to pass the stick over. We talked about the Florida Gators outlook. We need to talk about Oklahoma's outlook because one of the things we were interested in is year 2 coaches and Billy Napier going into year 2 with the Gators. Brent Venables going into year 2, not only as the Oklahoma Sooners head coach, but as a head coach. Jason, I'm going to pass you the floor. Same I did, man. Talk to us about Oklahoma. Talk to us about the outlooks. What scares you? What excites you? Floor is yours.
What excites me is that cupcake schedule that they got. They leave the state of Oklahoma 3 times. I mean, listen.
Appreciate the honesty.
Now, to be fair, the 3 times that they leave the state of Oklahoma, I don't know what Cincinnati's going to look like, but the BYU trip is not going to be fun. And that's right towards the end of the season. This is when,
My goodness, this is an absolute cupcake.
Yeah, it is. They're not playing K-State, which is the best thing about that schedule is not playing Kansas State. Although
you got Texas.
Texas, of course, it's every year, but
they'll always have that. Yeah,
yeah. So that one's gonna go, but and that we owe them one, so I feel pretty good about that. Texas' schedule is easy as well. They leave Texas twice. Period. So, again, what I love about it is that now what I would tell you is they probably needed that after the way they gave up that kind of they were 124 of 131 or something in total defense. Obviously, recruiting in the top 5 in the country, top 4 in the country, didn't hurt anything. The transfer portal was good to them. They probably could have did a little better the defensive tackle position, but when you look at guys like PJ Adebaware, when you look at guys like another guy that I saw there in San Antonio, Makari Vickers, unbelievable. He shut that entire side of the field down. Nobody threw his way, never. And so, to me, Samuel Mosillo, there's a lot of guys. Lewis
Sign
Carter.
Oh no, Lewis. Why did I say Lewis Sign?
Yeah,
thinking
Lewis
of the
Carter
safety
from
for
out there in
Georgia.
I mean, and it's something that you haven't seen in Oklahoma for a long time. They recruited defense, and they did great on offense too. Peyton Bowen, obviously. I mean, let's not forget about Peyton Bowen. That was a crazy deal all the way around. But I mean, top to bottom on that, I mean, you ended up with 6 top 100 players. So many of them on the defense. Even the offensive guys, you still got Jarquez Petaway. You got 2 amazing running backs, but they probably won't play this year. I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I mean, if you saw what Gavin Sawchuk looked like, and then obviously Barnes looked very well too a lot of times last season. And then, of course, you go out and you get one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and everybody thought that was going to go away with Lincoln. Quarterback U was over with because Lincoln left. And I think everybody was afraid last year. But if you look at what happened it's kind of like what you were saying about Florida. There were 5 out of those 7 losses. 5 of them were by 1 score. 4 of them by 3 points. So it very easily could have been 9-10 wins. It really could have. And so, and some of those losses were stupid. But the point is if you play even a top 70 defense in the country, you win 9. You just do. So if they do anywhere close, and I think they'll be, I worry about their number, who's going to be the number 1. If Jalil comes through and looks like he's going to be the guy, Farouk, great. But you got to hope that some of these guys that are unproven at receiver step up. Because as much as I like Stoops, I mean, he's not a home run hitter. You know what I mean? He's just not that guy. So you need Jalil to step up in that number 1 and be the guy that he can be. I feel like they were still top 15 in the country last year. And they're probably going to be a little better on offense. So, and if not, I guess we'll probably see Jackson a little early. But, my thought is that they're probably going to be – and with that schedule, I don't want to drink a whole lot of Kool-Aid because they did win 6 games. But they should have won 9, and they better win 9 this year with this schedule. And I almost feel like you need to. But the other thing is you kind of wonder what the Big 12 is going to allow. There's just so much of that. I mean, there was bad officiating all season. 1 holding call against an opponent the entire year is insane. So, not that I'm one of those dudes, because I'm not. But that's
just statistically speaking, that's wild.
There's no way in hell that happens ever.
To go through, well, I've said this before. At the end of the season, I think Bama had 1 holding call called against them. And I'm not saying that Bama was gypped by the refs. It was just that stat stood out to me. And I was like, wow, 1, right. Either they were just,
maybe they're just not calling them, but I mean, in Texas, I think a lot not to ever take up for Texas, but, and by the way, just that, but they only have 3 holding calls called against their opponents last season too in the Big 12.
Yeah, so it wasn't
a total of 4 between those 2 teams that are leaving. Doesn't look great. You know, it just doesn't look great. But we were joking in one of the shows last week, and I was like, I had the guys from Lone Star on, and I said, watch. I said, Xavier Worthy's going to be streaking down the sideline to get into the Big 12 championship game, and a ref's going to tackle him. So, I don't think they want to let him win it on the way out, and which I don't necessarily blame him. But as a fan, you don't want to see that.
When I look at OU right now, obviously the defense, that goes without saying. That's got to improve.
They loaded up though there, and with the transfer portal, they did very well in the places. I felt like Brent should have done that last year. My only question really is he going to start acting like himself? Me and Jay talk about this a lot, and he's like, what, you want him to lose his shit on the sideline? Yes, I do. I want to see that again. I want him to be him and stop trying to be a stuffed shirt version of himself. That's
not be you. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. But if I'm looking at Oklahoma's offense, there is one thing that I don't think it worries me, but I do find it alarming. Now, the reason I say I don't think it worries me because talent is in this room. The room I'm about to discuss, talent is there. That's not the issue. Experience is the issue, right? And I'm saying that as an Alabama fan that looked at our wide receiver room and said, we have some talented young freshmen. They don't have experience.
Yeah, they're just not proven.
That room was painful at times for Bama. But from a reception perspective, the Oklahoma Sooners lose close to 60% of their receptions from the 2022 season. And from a production standpoint, the Sooners lose roughly 67% of their wide receiver production from a season ago. That right there, like I said, while it doesn't worry me, that's something that has got to come about, right? Like that's something that's got to be addressed. Luckily, you have guys that you've been able to get in the transfer portal. Andrell Anthony from Michigan, LV Bunkley Shelton, Arizona State, JJ Hester, Missouri. Then you look at what you've done in recruiting. Petaway, doesn't he run like a 10.35, if I'm not mistaken, 100-meter?
Yeah, dude, he's smoked fire coming out of his feet, man. He's
stupid fast.
Fast.
But that's an area where I think that Oklahoma really needs to hit the ground running on. And the second area is this, the same thing I said about Florida. Oklahoma as a program is a Ferrari.
Right.
Because it's one of the winningest programs from a consistency standpoint. What was the streak of 10 win seasons? How many in a row? Or 9 win seasons? What was it? It was like something unfair, Jay. You'll know. Drop down.
Yeah, I think, what was it? Yeah, I want to say it was 10 win seasons.
Oh, it was something stupid.
It had to have been some, yeah. Well, and especially once Texas went, because they did. I pretty much every year there, except for, I want to say they had the 1 year. Shit, I was just looking through this a couple of months ago too, but I know that they had 2 8-5 seasons. Everything else, they had at least 10 wins since Stoops got there, pretty much.
Yeah, and so it's a Ferrari program, and I get it. There are going to be people that say, yeah, but they got shellacked in the playoffs. Sure. But I mean, they made it. That's always been my answer, is they made it to the playoffs. That's something. That's a start. But Brent didn't inherit a Ferrari, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
And that's where people, they talk about, oh no, if you look at the talent that they recruited, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Where was that last year? Before you start telling me that, how great and talented they, tell me who we're talking about, because
I see 5. I don't know if that's, they went 8-5 in 2014, and they went 11-2, 11-2, 12-2, 12-2, 12-2, then 9-2, then 11-2
Maybe it was winning seasons.
That goes all the way back to 98. Was there? They had a losing? Yeah, 99
that's what it was.
Yeah, 99 up until this year. Yeah.
That's just an insane streak.
With Bob Stoops, with Bob Stoops from 99 until Lincoln, well, I guess Lincoln Riley stepped in too and still kind of kept it going.
And to be fair, though, I mean, if in not to dog on my own school here, but the problem was that in these big games that you would lose, they were in the national championship an awful lot of time. I mean, not to bust on the Gators. They should have beat their ass whenever with Sam. They should have beat their ass. That's it. They didn't.
Major Wright had other plans, baby.
Major Wright had other plans, baby.
I love that you brought that up, because I don't know if I get to go in this segment because I hate them.
Absolutely.
Go get after it. Yeah.
But that game. I'm not gonna shut on. I'm not gonna give you shit. But that game is the epiphany of Oklahoma. Just can't get it done. Like they've always lived in the limelight. They've always been there. And for me, them going 6-7 was like, it's about damn time because the Big 12's finally arrived. And I think the Oklahoma's going to have a harder time than what people realize. In my opinion, I think the Big 12 is now was always kind of shitted on. I think the ACC has now found themselves in the last place in the Power 5 conference. Big 12, Pac-12 kind of going back and forth with it. I think Oklahoma did a phenomenal job in the recruiting, finishing top 4, has some amazing talent. Derek LeBlanc was a defensive lineman who Florida was going after. Samuel Osinago.
They were a nasty team. I'm not even, but I mean, they had. Anyway, yeah, it's
who
and who's this down here saying they shouldn't even have been in that game? You're going to tell me Texas, I guess. Yeah, whatever. They lost to Michael Crabtree.
Nick is a Texas fan. Yeah.
Where the 06 game? You talking the 06?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great one.
No, you guys had Sam Bradford, right? You guys, that was a good.
Yeah, Sam. No. I was talking about they lost to. They were going to be in that national championship game because they did beat Oklahoma that year, but they lost to. They turned around and lost to Michael Crabtree and Tech.
Oh,
yeah, with that catch.
Yep.
With a star receiver like Crabtree.
But what else did they? Do you remember another?
No, that's a Richard Sherman quote.
Because Graham Harrell, maybe.
Yeah, that was a good one. Now I'm interested in this Hightop because you think OU is going to have a season that looks more like the one they just had, or do you think that they're on a trajectory that will be conducive for success for Brent Venables?
Look, I think the Big 12 is coming up. I think Texas is going to be a battle. I was actually looking at their schedule, and so I think Arkansas, they got an Arkansas State W, SMU W, Tulsa W. Cincinnati, in my opinion, is done with Luke Fickell leaving. Iowa State should be an easy win. I think they lose Texas, so there's one loss. UCF could be a nail biter. That one isn't a toss up. I think Kansas, Oklahoma should roll. Oklahoma State, I'm an orange guy, Ricky Fowler dude. So, but I think they should be able to win that game. West Virginia, you guys shouldn't have lost this past season. West Virginia is a trash can of an organization. BYU should be a no-brainer. And TCU, I don't know what TCU is going to do. I think TCU might just fall
should be a no-brainer?
I think so, yeah.
Provo? Wow.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that they should win 9 for sure.
I think the BYU game, 9 to 10. The BYU game is one of those backseat games where it's like it's BYU, and sometimes they'll just ruin your season. Like they're simply there to ruin your football season. They're never going to go to a championship game. They're just there to ruin someone's season. And so
I actually really like that about BYU.
Yeah,
they're
so
they could season.
Yeah, they could. That could be a game where if you're going there undefeated, or you're in a possible chance for a Big 12 championship or whatever it may be, or a playoff contention, they could ruin your season. So it all just depends. I think it should be a rollover, but it could ruin your season. TCU, I feel like Georgia beat them so damn bad they don't even know if they have a football program coming back. I feel like how bad they lost, they could have just got wiped off the map.
I think Colorado beats them week 1.
I think so too. I think that loss was so bad it could demoralize the program.
I think that they have a hangover. I really do. I've been saying that. We've been saying that on my show a lot. That if they
you're going
to find out what Sonny's about right now, and what he can, as far as. But now they did recruit. They did a good job in recruiting.
Well, if I could jump in, not only did they lose Garrett Riley, Brian Carrington is now with Arizona State, and he's a big reason as to why they recruited so well. That guy right there is an ace on the trail. Arizona State has made 2 hires this offseason in Samples and Brian Carrington that I am really interested in seeing play out.
Right.
But sorry, didn't mean to interject right there.
No. I was just gonna say to Nick, I was 2008 as we were talking about, and it was McCoy. It was against the Texas quarterback was McCoy. You're right.
Question wasn't Major Applewhite the quarterback for Oklahoma in 06?
No. Major Applewhite, that's a Texas.
So here, kind of to continue my hate for Oklahoma. This is why I've never really respected Oklahoma. Just being honest with you. Look, SEC guy, we're cocky little assholes. So you got to understand where we come.
Hey man, I can't wait to get there. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. So look, when Oklahoma gets to the SEC, Oklahoma will never play in a playoff game again. Well, they will because there's 12, but it's gonna take them a while. They're gonna get waking up real quick.
Come on.
Look, Florida's not anywhere close either, so I can't. I'm not.
I was thinking to say, wait a minute though, but when you recruit like
what you gotta understand, I'm gonna talk shit even my teams in the shitter. All right, I'm keeping 100. I know I'm right there with you. There's some teams who don't have the realness to understand. When you got Arkansas State, SMU, and Tulsa and Cincinnati, your first, and Iowa State, and I understand Iowa State's your conference game, so you can't really control that. But those are your first 5 games. Come on now, right? Texas is your first.
So let me tell you why that happened. the Georgia game that we had scheduled, and we had Tennessee also scheduled.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot Georgia bailed on you guys, or vice versa. I don't know who.
Yeah,
but you're right. I do remember
pulled
that.
it. Sankey pulled the game.
Sankey
so it's
pulled
not
that one.
that wasn't a on Oklahoma's part. This is not.
Oklahoma
doesn't do the Okie Light thing. Just so we get that right. That's an Okie Light thing that you're talking about.
Well, here's a quick question I have.
And SEC guy's going to tell me about a cream puff non-con schedule? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Well, that's because our conference is that much better. We have to have a puff non-conference. I mean, we have FSU as one of our non-conference. Stop what? You got Kansas. You got Kansas.
Stop it. When you're playing FCS schools,
don't say Vandy.
Stop it.
FCS, you're playing Arkansas. You're playing Arkansas State. You're playing Arkansas State.
Here's one thing I will say: the Big 12
in place of Georgia.
Well, and that's fair.
There's nobody left.
Fair. But here's one thing I will say, because I get this a lot from Big 12 fans. They say, well, the SEC doesn't schedule anybody. And I was like, well, in 2017, Alabama opened up the season #1 against the #2 team in the nation, Florida State. Now, I'm not saying Florida State was a great team at the end of the year, but, we can talk about Bama scheduling the Citadel. They usually open up the season with a game that would be one of the tougher games in the Big 12. You know what I mean?
Florida schedule next year are 2 out of conference. We play Utah and FSU.
Amen. But look, if you look at Georgia's schedule too, they've got a trash schedule. If you look at Ohio State's schedule from last year, it was trash. I don't want to. I mean,
Ohio State's schedule. Oh, the Big Ten. Look, the Big Ten's the same way. That's why they get clapped every year. We're talking about you guys. We're talking about you guys right now.
Okay, look, but I'm just saying all these power schools that are out there playing these cream puff you on FCS. I don't want to hear it.
All I'm saying is when OU finally when OU limps their way in from their weak schedule, they get clapped.
It's not. Stop it, man.
And Georgia, look, is Georgia's schedule weak? Is Georgia's schedule weak, or is Georgia just that good that when we see them up against Tennessee, Kentucky,
man. Look at their schedule for part of it's because they don't have Oklahoma, but when you look at the rest, it's bad. It's bad.
Well, because you're looking at Georgia. They're the best team in the country. It's the same reason what Bama goes through every year. Like, oh, well, Bama's schedule's easy. Well, no, it's just Bama's just that good. So you don't give anybody they're playing any credit. You look at that Auburn game, you're like, oh, that's a cupcake game. Well, no, it's not.
I'm not talking about necessarily. Look at who it is though. They've got the worst. Everybody said it. This is not just me saying it.
No, I agree with you.
Florida guy.
It's SEC. Look, we keep 100 in the family. Okay.
Yeah.
And y'all will be in the family soon enough. But
Florida's schedule is an absolute dog of a schedule. It is probably the top 10 hardest schedule this year and last year. Yeah. Look, Georgia's schedule is cake, but when you actually look at it, it's the out of conference game because they play Georgia Tech too, which is an absolute joke. I agree.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. They get them, and then now, I mean, I don't know who they added. And last year they played Kent State.
Hey, Kent State gave them a run.
So did Oklahoma.
Yeah,
but that was Tennessee was another game that was taken away from OU because of all that stuff, and so the SEC are doing. Yeah, I get it. Listen, I'm not saying that they're going to go in there and dominate the freaking SEC. What do you think? I'm crazy? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, everybody, I'm not saying that. I think that they're going to go in there and compete. I don't want to hear that they're never going to be in a playoff against stuff.
Look, here's what I love.
If you know Oklahoma and you know Oklahoma fans and the way that it is, the culture there is you're going to win just like it is in the SEC. It is just so you know, there is a winning record against the SEC for OU. So
look, I think
they're not going to be okay with. They're not going to go in and they're not playing Alabama every week or Georgia every week either. There's a lot of schools there.
You'll be a powerhouse. Here's what I love about OU and Texas coming into the SEC. Just makes the SEC the daddy conference, right? But I like the fact we talk about it all the time. Like, hey, because when that question earlier, what do you consider a success? You can't consider a record a success anymore because back in the day in 2006 to early 2000s, you had to go undefeated to go to the national championship. With the addition of with a 14 playoff, that's been eliminated a little bit. You can get in with 1 or 2 losses now, depending on where those losses happen. Why I love the extension of a 12-team playoff is because with the addition of this conference, the SEC is going to be a bloodbath. They are going to beat the shit out of one another. But that doesn't mean we saw it. Bama was the better school.
Been in the Big 12 too because of the 9-game schedule and the round robin.
Bama should have been in the playoff. based on just pure talent and being the better team.
If they were going to beat anybody, they would have beaten everybody in it, except for probably Georgia.
TCU deserved to be there because of the rules in place. You can't take TCU out of the playoffs. Like, I don't agree with that. But if we have a 12-team playoff, the team that should have been actually in the playoff, and we would have had a better college football championship if we have an extension in the playoffs. Because, again, you play in a tough conference, you beat yourself up year in and year out. That's what happens. So I'm excited for
to me, it was a shame that Ohio State got in. I mean, even though they played well against Georgia, they played the worst schedule. They got housed at home by a team that got beat by TCU in the freaking playoff. And that was the other thing. Why in the hell did they not drop TCU to 4 and make those Big Ten teams play? That was a setup to make sure that, that was brutal.
Can you pull the LFG comment up, Ty? I don't know if this is how your channel usually rides, but I'm a spicy one. So the Miami UF rivalry, like, it's not a rivalry when you're the big brother. Like, Miami hasn't been anybody for the last decade. They haven't been anything since 2001. Like, that game, I would love to have that game every year. I would love to have that game. But Miami does not play the same schedule as what UF has to go through. So the only one that's really taken a shot there is UF. You put Miami on your schedule and Florida State every single year on top of what they're already having to go through with Georgia, LSU, and Bama every so often. That's a bloodbath. You got to understand, like, where it's coming from. And back in the day, again, you have to figure out, how do we get to an undefeated season? Well, if you can manage that out of conference game, you're going to play a cupcake. Like, everyone hates on Saban for doing it, but it's smart management. What do I gain by beating myself up? I already play in a powerhouse conference. All I need to do is make it to the SEC championship. I don't need to prove to anybody that I beat Miami week 1. It doesn't do anybody any favors.
And even then, he was out there scheduling Michigan, Florida State, Bama's week 1 opponents. They were typically.
I got nothing to say about Bama. I think, look,
I'm not bad mouthing Bama, except for that. I don't like to see that towards the end of the year when they're out there playing some, and like Tennessee, after playing Alabama, they go and play East Tennessee State.
I guess my question isn't this? So I had the same question whenever the head coach of TCU said this. Whenever he's like, "Oh, well, we're out here playing Kansas State, and Georgia's out there playing the Citadel." Well, Georgia heard that. They took your skull, drug you down the field, 63-7, and then the team that won the Big 12 played Bama when Bama showed up for a quarter and a half and got racked. Here's the crazy thing:
118-27 or something like that.
Bama got their ass kicked in the first quarter. Kansas State possessed the ball for 10 minutes on one drive in the second quarter. There's 15 minutes, so they had the ball on one drive, 10 minutes. And they got blown out in 5 minutes in the third quarter. Bama showed up for 20 minutes and blew them out the water.
Oh, yeah.
And that wasn't a great Bama team. That was a Bama team.
Texas did that to them, too.
Well, and but here's what I will say. I do think that the teams coming into the SEC in Texas and Oklahoma, they are teams that can get acclimated to the league because of the way they recruit.
Recruiting, yes.
Texas has got to figure out some of their own internal stuff first, but I do think Sark is doing a good job of moving the needle. It just takes. I don't think a lot of people
realize. 500 Sark to you? I mean, to me, he's 500 guy. He's always been 500.
Sure, but the sins of the father do not define the son. And what I mean when I say that is, if I'm looking at what someone did at their last job and saying there's no other way that we can possibly go up from here. Do you get what I mean when I'm trying to say that, right? Like, we're looking at Sark back before he kind of went through his whole.
But we're not, because he's got 2 more years where he's had great recruits. Great.
Sure,
yeah, Bijan freaking Robinson.
You're literally looking at the Texas Longhorns team and saying this was a ready to go team. That was not. Here's my thing. Have you said Texas had a bad culture?
Quarterbacks, no.
No. But here's my thing. Have you at any point argued that Texas had a bad culture? And how long have you argued that they've had a bad culture? Has it gone on for 5+ years? I would imagine since about 2012.
Mac.
Okay, so 2010, we'll say.
Yeah.
So you want to say 10 years of bad culture, and all of a sudden Sark comes in there, and when he doesn't win it in 2 years, all of a sudden it's Sark. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any sense to me. Right? Like, we also have to have the nuance in the conversation to look at what he...
I mean, you're not going to get me to say anything nice
about
Texas,
that's
just so
fair,
you understand
that's
that.
Fair. That's fair. I love it.
Just so
it.
I mean, you're never going to get that, but I I have said that with Quinn, I think that Sark put Quinn in bad positions this year when you've got the best running back in the country and they weren't using him at the right times. You're up 17 in Stillwater and midway through the third quarter and he doesn't touch the ball anymore.
True.
And you're throwing into that, and they've got that stupid East-West. They're
Second
the only
half adjustments are
one of two stadiums in America that does that backwards-ass stadium to where they've got an East-West, and you got that crosswind, and they've got him throwing deep balls instead of giving the ball to freaking Bijan. And so I feel like he loses his mind in the second half. His adjustments, I just don't trust Sark a lot. I just really don't. When he was with Nick Saban, Nick's going to be like, yo, what the hell are you doing? Give the damn ball to Bijan Robinson.
I just think, and I don't disagree, I just think we look at Texas, we saw how they recruited because we looked at the ranking beside them, but we didn't really look at the lack of cohesion that Tom Herman, Charlie Strong was really able to assemble in those classes, something that Sark is addressing. And I think that we always think that it's going to be an easier fix. I think Texas is a lot like bad code, where you build a program, and if your initial code is bad and you just keep spaghettiing on top of it, you're going to have a bad time. Now, I don't want to keep you guys here all evening, but I did want to get this last topic out before I send everybody on their way. I you already know. Okay,
yeah,
if you need to go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I got to rip. We've got the baby, got to get food. So I hate to go, but I appreciate it. I see you guys commenting. I don't want to bail out. You guys can come over and yell on my channel. I invite it. I even do call-in shows. So who's
nice.
saying? Yeah, Anthony Mazzano, you're more than welcome to call in. LFG, you guys can call in and yell at me. I keep it open. I keep an open door policy. So I take it to the chin all day. And you guys can call in too as well. I've enjoyed this. I would love to come back on if I didn't.
Hey man, yeah, I'd love to have you guys on my show too. So anytime, not at all.
No, I had a ton of fun, man.
Me too.
Anytime. I'll get with you after this. I'm not going to keep you here, but I'll get with you after this. We'll have you back on the stream real soon. I had a lot of fun doing this, man.
Good, man. I'm glad. I again appreciate you reaching out and making this work. This has been incredible. So incredible fan base, incredible chat. You guys have been great. Appreciate you taking the shot, Jason and Type. You're the man, bro. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Have a good evening, guys. Hightop Sports joining us this evening. If you have not checked out his content, do me a favor. Go over right now, Hightop Sports. His Twitter is in the scrolling bio right now. Before we got live on here, before we got rolling, I was commenting, that guy, his production, his audio, the way he formats his content, it's top tier.
It's a killer channel, dude. Killer channel.
Y'all need to go over there. And the thing is, even though some people disagree with what he's saying, it's sparked
he's fun though, and
awesome.
you know what? He's one of those dudes that he's gonna do it just to bust chops, and it's fun for him. And you know, and he'll take it as much as he gives it.
But then look at the conversation that ensued, right? Look at the information that was getting boom, 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 and then at the very end of it, we're all like, "Oh yeah,
this is why we do this, is to have that fun." Right?
Yeah, that was so much fun. Now, the last topic was kind of tailored for him, but I think we'll talk about it and quickly get out of here. Okay. News on Miami. Have you seen this today, man?
A bit, yeah, about the girls, the basketball players. Is that what we're talking about?
But it went from first that it was the girls team that was going to be facing penalties to now it's the athletic department that's facing penalties. So,
but they're not, right?
I have no idea.
It's not what it looks like. It sounds like because of the legislation from the other day.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Because what happened was, and what they were trying to do, it sounded to me like, was they were trying to get rid of this, obviously the rich guys, what's the boosters' names from Miami? It's Ruiz, right? So they're trying to get rid of them but they facilitated. What happened was the coach facilitated this discussion between Ruiz and the girls. But DeSantis changed the law, so there's nothing they can do. But it's like they put up I think I read something about they put up a stop sign or something like that. I mean, they're like, this can't happen anymore. But it can. There's nothing they can do. So.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about this, Anthony. It's because it's just so wild to me, and there's so little information out. We're not here to pass. Well, I'm not, at least.
I don't care. I don't care. I didn't know anything about it until I just saw it earlier.
Yeah, well, that's my point. I just don't know anything enough about it to say anything. Now, before we
I
get
was
out
good
of
with you
here,
tossing that off to Hightop because I was like, I kind of know a little bit. It's like I don't have an opinion.
yeah, I know he
You know,
was excited for that one, and I got a little irresponsible. We got involved in conversation. We went a little bit
it
over, but
happens.
it is what
It
it is. It
happens.
just
Yeah.
makes the show good. But guys, before we get out of here, do want to give a quick plug out real quick to Home Field. Home Field has been my go-to shop for college football apparel, and that's actually what I'm wearing right now. Let me get the what I'm wearing right now is Home Field. You guys can see, got the Home Field banner back there. Home Field, Jesus, sticker on the laptop, but they are working with the channel now. If you head over, if you use the link in the description of this video, new customers get 15% off when you use code ATTS15. If you guys need your fan wear, Home Field has got you covered. They have some awesome stuff.
Killer stuff, dude.
They
I
have
like
some
it.
great stuff, man.
Yeah.
I've been on there. I'm gonna have a problem ordering way too much from there. But before we get out of here, man, closing thoughts. Anything you wanted to say before we exit stage left?
Man, I just wanted to thank you for having me on, man. I've been a fan of your show. I've enjoyed it since I kind of got started on it as well. Yeah, everybody, please make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel. If you, I mean, obviously you're here, you probably are, but come check me out at it's at CFB podcast on YouTube. That's just the handle there. It's obviously Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at BirdieManDub. We're doing a lot of content. We're starting to grow pretty well, and I'm enjoying it. So, I mean, I love to have you on. I know we're gonna have you on Tuesday. So,
yes, very excited.
Can't wait for that.
that.
It's make sure that you guys all show up for that. We're gonna have a few people on for that one, but definitely want to have Ty on. I appreciate, like I said, man, it was good to be on this show. I had a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. About Marshall meaning. Gotcha. Ty, it's crazy. I was reading somewhere that Miami, Oklahoma, Texas, Bama, Georgia, LSU, and Ohio are already recruiting Marshall, a fifth grader. Recruiting is wild, man. I'll never forget whenever God.
I think that he's probably really good. I think that this kid is probably very, very good. Marshall is Peyton's kid, right? It's got to be.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I saw him playing. Yeah. It's because he's throwing balls out there where you can see him at games. So, but
it's a little bit like Dylan Moses.
Arch looks pretty good. I mean, I've seen some throws that he's made. Now, obviously, he didn't get hit. I don't think that he's better than Quinn yet, and I think that look, far be it from me to give love to a Longhorn, but I think that he's better than people gave him credit for. And I that's why I was really on Sark more than anything, is that I feel like he put him in some bad spots when he didn't have to.
I don't disagree with that.
When you got Bijan and Roshan back there, why?
And an offensive line that was really good. Really good. And so I don't disagree with you there. I think that I just see a lot of people looking at Sark and they're like, oh, well, he's never going to get it done. And it's just like, man, I think people don't realize how much he's having to pile out of before he can ever.
I don't disagree with that necessarily.
Like,
I'm not one of the people that hates on Tom Herman so much, but I'm not a Texas fan, so I don't know the insider stuff of that either. So.
I don't hate on Tom Herman, but the way he recruited wasn't conducive to like long-term team building. And what I mean when I say that, it would have been fine if he was like, okay, I got a great offensive line. I have some pieces built, and now I can just add onto the house.
Right.
Tom Herman always recruited as if the foundation was unbelievable at Texas.
Yeah.
Nino Sports Corner has a video he put out about a year and a half ago, and it is spectacular, that talks about the problems in recruiting of Texas's offensive line. They recruited less offensive linemen than everybody in the Big 12. And so then they got to a
crazy. And you know what? That my guy told me, Christian was telling me that from Lone Star, and he was saying the same thing. I was just like, wow.
And that's what I mean when I say, like, I don't disagree with you about Herman, but I didn't think his recruiting was conducive to long-term team building, where Sark, some of the in-game adjustments look second half adjustments. That's got to be priority numero uno for Texas.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Good God.
The first year they look, they lost the Red River. They were up 28 7. And then they proceeded to lose the next 6 with halftime leads.
Yeah, and that's something that has to change, but I am sympathetic because I do look at a program and I'm like, okay, well, you've identified a major issue and you are doing great work in fixing it. I don't know whether he's going to be the long-term answer. Future will be told on that very soon, but I think if at worst, Texas fans, if he's not the long-term answer, he was the correct stepping stone. And I do think there is something.
And I would give you that part too. And I mean, shoot, I even gave him a little level before the Washington game when he lost his shit like that. I laughed so much about him, the guy that was touching him and pushing him back, and the way he lost it. I was like, I wouldn't want to know Mr. Hansy over there to be touching me like that either. I get it.
Yeah,
so,
look.
And so many people got so angry with the way he reacted to that. I thought it was hilarious.
He may have overreacted a bit, but like, come on, guys! Like, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, it was.
And
he
kept grabbing. It was kind of a weird way that he was like, yeah.
I looked at that and I was like, did Sark overreact? Maybe a little, but is it worth this whole mountain we're creating out of this molehill? No, come on, guys.
It was too. I was taken up for him on Twitter, and I rarely would do such a thing, but it was funny. For comedic value. Leave the guy alone.
Well, Jason, one more time before we get out of here, remind me again and remind everybody, where can they find all your great stuff?
Most of my stuff right now, I'm actually working on a new website, so I'll have that up soon. But right now, just on YouTube is the best way to find us. We are at CFB College Football, CFB-podcast. And then obviously at Birdie Man Dub on Twitter. So, you can definitely, and that's right there. So, and then we are on Facebook as well. I mean, I don't really probably service Facebook as much as I should. I need to get better with the whole AI stuff.
I actually just created a Facebook for Around the Table Sports. And guys, I'm going to I have my personal Twitter account, but I think I'm going to create a dedicated Around the Table Sports Twitter. That way I can be more honest about posting all of my content onto the different socials. But yeah, man, I'm very excited about the show on Tuesday. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'll post that.
We'll have a blast. Tab. Yeah, I'll have some stuff. I would definitely want to talk about some of these rule changes. So make sure we definitely need to have a chat about that. I figured there some of these guys that have a heyday with it, and then I saw a couple of things about the top 10 players in college football heading into next season. Thought we could have a good little debate about that. We'll talk. We'll find a few more things, I'm sure. And but hey, thanks a lot for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Everybody who tuned in, thank y'all so much. You are. I say this every time, and I truly do mean it.
The like button.
You guys are such a big reason as to why the stream is as fun as it is. One of the things that I think it just makes this stream so great is we have a great balance of information, chill, right? To where it feels like everybody's here together, like we're friends at a table. We have a great combination of information, chill vibes, and interaction. And I think that's what
three of these guys are in my streams all the time. I love them. They're my favorites, man. James, Hank, Kim. These guys are. I mean, I know them all the time. Neo, I haven't met you a whole lot, but I think Anthony's been in there a couple of times. But I mean, these guys are great, and I always say that our audiences are smart, man. They get it.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. If you're in February and you're sitting here on a Friday night at 6:30 watching me talk college football, you probably know more college football than me. And I apologize that I'm bringing the room down.
I think you're pretty sharp there, man. You got it,
guys.
You're the reason that I watch it. I like your show. It's solid, man.
I appreciate it.
So it was an honor to be on it, man. Really, thank you.
Appreciate you giving me the time, man. And I can't wait to come in on Tuesday. Everybody in the comments, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on Monday. Until next time, see ya.